is there not an opportunity for us to maybe use the current experience as a way to reflect on where we've come from? Were we really as well prepared to weather life storms even before COVID-19? If not, why not? Have we become complacent? Have we become perhaps used to a certain way of living without necessarily keeping in mind what that destination is that we're working towards? Is it possible that perhaps for a long time already we've lost perspective of just what that vision is that we're working towards? Give me an opportunity to discuss an idea with you. Okay, imagine that you're a ship or a boat on calm waters on the ocean, but you can see that there's a storm building on the horizon, and before you know it, the storm is pounding down on your ship. And it's kind of like what we're experiencing currently in the world. It's unexpected, but we need to somehow navigate ourselves through it. In order for you to get yourself through the storm, okay, you're going to need three things. You need to know your current location. Every ship has a GPS. Hopefully yours is working. You also need to know your destination, your harbor of safety, where you're heading towards. You also need to be able to plot your course and navigate rough waters. Okay, that's the third element needed to get yourself through the storm. So as psychologists, we've ourselves been trying to make sense of how we should respond to the current situation, this pandemic that's facing the world. And it's not that simple, we've realized. After months of discussion, we kind of agree that we're not confident just handing you a toolkit to help you cope in this current circumstances would be enough. Unfortunately, as human beings, we're a little bit more complex than that. We've come up with the idea of visionology. Okay? In the same way that we need to navigate ourselves through the storm, we feel that visionology encompasses three components. Firstly, locating or situating ourselves in the current situation. We need to fully engage with this moment that we find ourselves in currently, and our experience of this new abnormal situation and reality, in order for us to prepare ourselves for the changes we might need to make to navigate ourselves through the storm. The second component is bringing our destination or our vision of where we're heading, the vision of calm waters, back into perspective. The third component is to purposefully realign our course with our vision. We need to try and understand why it is that a storm throws us off course, not just this one, but possible future storms. We're really working towards equipping you with a mindset that will make you feel a little bit more confident in just bracing storms as we pace ourselves through life.
Thank you, Dave. I really think that the current storm that we are all facing and we've been blown off course by recently is the current COVID-19 pandemic. And if one considers what pandemic really means, the pan aspect of pandemic means that it applies across. And the demic section of it is derived from the Greek, which is demos or demos. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but essentially it relates to all people. So this pandemic is impacting on everyone. And so there's never a better time than to hit the pause button and start now with having a look at where we are in our boats, what our boats look like. I know that some people talk about we're all in the same boat, and we're not. We're in different boats. What is our boat right now? What are the tools that we've got in our boats? And what are some of the holes that we've got in our boat that actually might make our navigation to that other side, to that destination, a little bit more tricky? So I'm excited about this course that we put together. We've been speaking about it a lot. We've been looking at ways and means that we can help people sow the seeds to consider their current future situations and how to get there.
We are all coming to the storm with different boats. So some of us might have lovely yachts that are brand spanking new, that are shiny. Some of us, like you said, might have boats that have got holes in them already based on our situation that we've had up to now. So it's really about us noticing that although we're in this together, we're actually all experiencing it individually as well, because we all have our own stresses already, should we say. Along the way, we can hopefully patch up some of those holes in the boat, you know, through that self-awareness, that self-engagement.
So I think it's quite important to name what we're feeling now, what we're experiencing, and in a way kind of normalize a range of experiences, because there's no right way to pandemic. And I think that's such an important thing to remember, that there's no right way to get through this. I suppose the other analogy that's being used a lot during this time to describe what we're currently experiencing is this concept of, you know, we're running a marathon, and that this isn't a sprint, we're in it for the long term. And I think, you know, I think it's important to look at that analogy in a little bit more detail, because whilst the analogy of marathon gives us a sense of the longevity of this, I think if we think about it deeply, firstly, none of us chose to run this marathon. So that storm analogy, it came out of nowhere. We haven't trained for this marathon, and we don't know that it's going to end at 42 kilometers. And so part of looking at the current is being able to accept this real state of feeling unfit for these times. And so I suppose part of what we want to bring and what we want to share is just what the current can look like, can be like, and what kind of the range of experiences that we've seen in our practice and that we've personally experienced in terms of how we are navigating and experiencing the current before being able to necessarily set our sights on the future.
Watching this video, we need to ask ourselves how many of these dilemmas that we're experiencing now possibly existed even before COVID-19. I think we're so quick to say that we need to find a way to navigate the current storm, but we forget that, but wait, hang on, we've been through a couple of storms before. Why is it that this storm in particular is having such a tremendous effect on us?
Something that COVID has really done for us is that we've become so caught up in life's busyness and life's chaos and life's, you know, almost ticking through every day, and then we sleep and we go to the next day, and then that's the next routine. COVID's almost forced us to stop, to reflect, to say to myself, okay, well, what are we doing now? Where do I need to change my life? What do I need to do to change my life? And I think that's where for us as full psychologists, it really resonated with us, because we said, you know, what is happening? This isn't just a COVID thing. This is a long time coming, and COVID's almost provided us with a natural opportunity to now reevaluate.
And I know that you work in a school as an educational psychologist and work with a lot of children and parents, and I'm also quite involved in a junior school. And so the principals, the teachers, the mothers, the children are all affected. And it's not only doctors, it's nurses that need to be taking time out to consider all that's happening.
You have single mothers who are trying to juggle work with raising kids. You have families whose main source of income has been cut in half or taken away completely. You have elderly people that are socially isolated. You have people who are really struggling financially, and I'm not talking about just paying the bills. I'm talking about meeting basic needs.
There's so many people that are affected. I think what we as psychologists want to do is we know that time pressures and financial pressures and medical aid pressures and all of the family-related pressures often rob us of opportunities for self-growth, for self-development, for self-reflection.
We as humans are such control freaks. We like to know what's going on. We want to know what's going on. We want to plan what's going on. And COVID has really given us an opportunity to say, well, actually, we can't know what's going on. And I think during a stressful time, that is already stressful, but now it's a prolonged stressful time, which makes it even more stressful.
You've said it. I think as human beings, we find comfort in predictability and certainty. I think it's part of what our primitive brain craves, because when we know what's going to happen, or if we can predict it, it calms down our seat of survival and it says, I'm safe, and then I can go about my daily business. And I think we have been living, I suppose, under somewhat of an illusion of certainty and predictability before COVID. We kind of assumed that, you know, the holidays that we booked for this year would just happen because they've happened every other year. We've assumed that the wedding that you planned would just happen because that's what happens. And I suppose COVID has thrown all of that out of the window and made us really kind of feel unsafe and unsure. And I guess it can feel very scary. And part of, I guess, the way of fortifying ourselves against this is, on the one hand, accepting that life is inherently uncertain and unpredictable. And at any given time, something can happen.
In referencing this addiction that we have to the idea of certainty, I think it's referring to a certain mindset we've been living under before COVID that has left us in a very vulnerable space. So maybe we're more aware of our vulnerability right now, just because we are reminded wherever we look that we're not okay. When you get your paycheck, you realize I'm not okay. When you get home burnt out after working on the front lines, you realize you're not okay. When your family have the demands of you still being a father and still being a mother, and you realize that you're not okay. So we're so much more aware of our own vulnerability, and therefore we believe that we're not coping. But I wonder if we were really coping before this.
I think what you're saying, Dave, is so important. And I think, you know, part of what COVID has done is highlighted the fact that we are inherently vulnerable. And I guess pre-COVID world made us somewhat believe we were robots. Well, we were operating like robots, a lot of people, and a lot of workplaces expected employees to be like robots. And I think if I think about the work I'm doing with a lot of my clients pre-COVID, is being able to access that sense of vulnerability, because I think in there lies an authenticity and a path to kind of fixing those holes in the boat. But we have to admit and accept our vulnerability as human beings, and it's a very scary place. And so COVID has thrust us into this, where the very things that we've almost tried to resist or deny are in our face. Things like death, things like hunger, things like lack of financial security, you know, all the things that are there, but we've created all these illusions and this kind of life that makes us think those things aren't real, and now they're right here. And so part of, I suppose, what I guess it's a gift, it sounds weird but it is the gift or opportunity of accessing and getting in touch with our vulnerability, and what does it mean to be human, and how do we live in this messy, vulnerable, scary human space, and what do we do with that, which I think is really hard for a lot of people.
So Lauren mentioned it's like a gift, and I was actually thinking about, you know, the focus on the present. You know, this is a present, it is a gift. And well, it can be, and it can be overlooked. And we can't go back in the past, we can't push the rewind button at all. And we can't accelerate forward without navigating the here and the now. And so we need to look at the gift of the present. And you know, I'm so excited because listening to all of you as we're speaking here, it sort of brings up a whole lot of metaphors and analogies for me. And I guess this is what we're wanting for the listeners. We're wanting you guys to sit there with your pen and a piece of paper and to allow your mind to just connect with one or two ideas so that those images, those analogies, those metaphors may be helpful for you. You know, for example, I think with also Lauren's analogy of the marathon, I just started thinking about holding a piece of paper, and a paper is very, very light. But if you hold that piece of paper out for a long time, there's going to be a whole lot of fatigue in your arms and your muscles, and that's going to start to get really, really heavy. And so being in that storm for a couple of days, maybe we can weather a couple of days of storm. But this storm is going on much longer than we would ever hope for. And so we need to learn how to strategically put down a lot of the things that we're carrying and learn different ways and means to carry those burdens. And we want to help share some ideas to get your creativity flowing. And I think that's the whole idea of Visionology, is to get insights, to get perceptions, to help us crystallize different views on what we are going through right now, so that it can ultimately be helpful for ourselves and for those around us.
This course is really about creating that self-awareness. And I think with that self-awareness comes self-compassion, appreciating yourself, taking some time out for yourself. And for me, this course of Visionology is, again, really about us almost saying, okay, well, let's stop, let's reflect. How do we need to adjust our path? How do we need to maybe change paths? How do we need to change the end destination? So it's really about us, one, becoming aware and authentic around what's actually going on for ourselves, and then using that to have some self-compassion, to have some direction for change.
Lots of people are very skeptical about this process of self-reflection, and why do I have to feel my feelings? It's uncomfortable and it's yuck, and I can just carry on. And I guess what we're trying to do here is kind of debunk that myth that psychology is only for the disturbed, and that actually there's so much around psychology that is just understanding human behavior in good times and bad times. And so I suppose what we're trying to do in this series as well is bring our knowledge up front to proactively try and support people, so that then people have a chance to be far more active in their own journey. And if you read a lot of the literature around trauma and trauma recovery, there's so much out there that says people that up front start taking care of their mental health and start proactively trying to connect with what's going on, give space for the difficult emotions, lean into support. Those people that start doing that earlier on in the trauma process definitely have a higher chance of not experiencing more severe post-traumatic effects afterwards.
If there's something that prevents us from dealing with a dilemma in our life proactively, or just responding to the demands of life proactively, it's typically based on fears that we have. So if you are sitting here and you're telling yourself that, no, it doesn't sound like me, four strings just chatting about what's going on in the world right now, I'd far rather just march on, then I want to go so far as to say that you have to admit to yourself, just in this moment, your fears are limiting you. Is that a mindset that serves you well in your relationships and your work? Or is that a mindset that you have the opportunity to change? And I think that's what we're saying. Our response to the current pandemic is not that we want to equip you with a couple of life jackets or tools or skills that will help you to relax or sleep better or work through your uncomfortable emotions, but for you to really do some introspection as to how life, even before COVID-19, has been limited, and in many cases self-limited, self-induced limitations that we live by. So there is an opportunity for all of us to make some changes if we are willing to face those fears.
So Dave, are you saying that we're going to be challenging some people?
Mark, I think if we are going to have this conversation and we are not going to feel uncomfortable at some stage, then I feel we are missing the point. I often take this approach with my clients in my rooms, and I prepare them for it. Very often in the first consultation would tell them, if at some point in time you start feeling uncomfortable during the course of our therapy process, it means that we're hitting a nerve. We're probably dealing with the right issues. if you feel like this is an easy voyage, then somehow I'm failing you. And I really do hope that the series of talks is going to speak straight to the issue.
You know, Dave, I just have to say that people can come up with a whole lot of excuses. And I think sometimes time is an excuse, sometimes money. And by the way, let's just be clear, when we're talking about this course, let's tell them how much it costs.
Nothing.
Zero rand, okay. It's costing nothing other than your time and your engagement. And I think that's exciting. And another excuse, though, is the person's ego. And I guess in my practice, I see that there are two extremes. The one is the person who doesn't believe that they need any help, on the one hand, and then you get the other person that knows that they need so much help, but they believe that no help will actually change anything whatsoever. And I think those are mindsets that both of them need to be challenged. Well, I want to encourage you to allow yourself to receive different ideas, different metaphors, different opportunities to stir yourself up, to be challenged in a way, to see whether your vision of your current circumstance can be changed. You know, because we don't want anyone to be in a learned helplessness mode. A learned helplessness means that all sense of controllability is gone. And while we acknowledge that some is gone, you still have the ability to choose how you are going to respond to the current set of circumstances. And also, this current scenario isn't going to be pervasive and forever. Certain things are going to be different enduringly. But many of these situations are temporary, and so we need to remind ourselves of that. And there's not a pervasiveness in terms of your skill set. People change. People can change. And I think that mindset needs to be challenged. And we need to really hold out faith and hope for you that things can change. And similarly for the people that believe that they've got it all under control. It's great if you do, but there is going to come a time when that isn't going to be a reality for you. And so that's why we want to grab your attention. We want to be proactive. We want to go out and say, share this video, share this course, share some of these ideas so that you can invite others along with us to reflect, to consider, to use this as an opportunity to experientially learn how to sap the good out of the situation. That's what it's about, is hitting the pause button and reflecting and sharing ideas together, because we want to be hopeful. Despite the despair and despite the heartache, we want to be hopeful. We want to give some skills, some tools, and some opportunities to really translate this into a navigatable positive for all of us, and for those that we are leading, for those that we are role models to.